Welcome, everybody. I am Ruxana Zia from the Center of Learning and Teaching here at FC College. You have already met Fatma. Ismail. She is the educational developer with us. And you have heard a lot from CLT at FCC, that is Zarek, our academic coordinator, who has been working behind the scenes with you very closely. So just to give you a quick introduction, the purpose of this series is actually to provide a forum where all of us can learn from each other. So it's more like peer sharing. And we have invited international and national speakers to work on different areas of their expertise. And you will have an opportunity to talk to them. The course has been set up on the Researcher Development Framework by WITE, which has recently changed in 2025. And if I may add that this webinar is a part of the 24 research webinars that we have aligned for the session. So based on the framework, this webinar is entitled Redefining Qualitative Inquiry from Traditional Methods to Generative AI. And it's a pivotal session led by Sara Rizvi from our own campus, and I'll introduce her shortly. This session serves as a critical bridge between established qualitative research foundations of modern, rapidly evolving landscape of generative AI. So the 24 session methodology course provides a very strong coverage, as you know, of the RDF domains, which includes researchers' values, behavior, research methods, digital literacy, ethical and responsible research, scholarly communication, publication, introducing and promoting collaborative research culture. Though it offers limited coverage of funding and finance, formal project management, supervision, partly covered, and people management, coaching and mentoring, and research, translation, and commercialization. These are new areas that have been added to the RDF framework, and we have yet to, incorporate them into our course. And this session explores the session today, webinar 9, explores the evolution of qualitative inquiry from traditional research approaches with the emerging role of AI right now. And it will give you a concise overview of qualitative research, key considerations in research design, and the ways AI can shape data collection and analysis. But let me very quickly introduce you a superb resource person and a researcher. And I think you are a professor now, or you're an associate professor, right, Sara? She is Dr. Sara Rizvi is an associate professor in the Department of Sociology. Until very recently, she was the chair. And if I start reading her list of accomplishments, it's a page long. Very quickly to say that she has a postdoctoral fellowship in the Department of Social Policy from the University of Oxford in UK. She earned a PhD and MPhil from University of Punjab and BSc Honours from London School of Economics. And her research focuses on public health, social policy, women's studies, and social development. She has authored more than 50 peer-reviewed research articles published in international impact factor journals. She is author of books. She is a principal investigator for many grants. And in addition, she is also the founding editor of the Formal Journal of Social Sciences, a board member of the FCCU Institutional Review and editorial board of Pakistan Journal of Women's Studies. Sara, that is a remarkable accomplishment for a young person like you, and we are honored to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ruxana. Thank you. Just going to share slides. Fatma or Zarek, could you just confirm if these are moving?
Yes.
Great. Let me just shift this up. the meeting is being recorded. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, CLT. I'll start because we're already at nearly 10 minutes past. A little bit about what we'll be covering today. I've split the presentation into two parts. The first is concept-based, and the second is samples and examples from publications. The basic definition, for qualitative research, just so that we can overview this together, is that unlike quantitative research, the emphasis is on discovering words, hidden meanings, interpretations, and symbols in the collection of data and representing as much rich data as possible. There are different types of research methods in qualitative research, the main ones being ethnography and participant observation. The example is if you spend around 3 to 6 months in a village or in a rural community observing how women negotiate household healthcare decisions in daily life, this comprises as participant observation. Obviously, one of its limitations is that it's time intensive, and many researchers or students or young researchers these days are unable to opt for this. And this is why it's a very treasured data collection option, because it's rarely attempted by researchers these days. We're living in a very fast-paced society that is requiring academically and professionally for us also to produce research very fast. And I have found in my personal experience also that people are shifting away from participant observation for this reason, and because of the pressure of higher publications, which is our reality. Then apart from that, we obviously have the most common form of qualitative data collection, which is qualitative interviewing. There are two types: in-depth interviews, which are face-to-face, one-on-one, and then it can also be face-to-face with groups, 5 to 6 group members, known as focus group discussions. And another way of conducting qualitative research is the language approach. Now, this is the collection and qualitative analysis of, for example, texts and documents. Let's say recently my students and I conducted a research where we analyzed school textbooks and policy documents to identify how religious minorities are being represented in Pakistan. And this is also qualitative research. A little bit on somebody just texted me and asked me, well, can qualitative data collection be secondary based? This is another question altogether. I can't understand why people are getting confused, but basically in today's session, we're talking about primary data collection related to qualitative research, and not necessarily secondary analysis of data that is openly accessible or that you retrieve from others. Okay, so a little bit about the philosophical background. We are usually very familiar with this onion approach, which is the process of shifting towards research or conducting your research by removing layers. And the first layer is basically the philosophy. So with quantitative research, it's usually the positivist ideology, but with qualitative, it's the interpretivist ideology. And if you have an interpretivist ideology, then you will move towards inductive reasoning, qualitative interviews, cross-sectional or longitudinal, and then you'll choose your data collection and analysis techniques. And so you're moving from the outer layer towards the inner. But having said this, the most important thing over here is that sometimes you may have a philosophical orientation that is interpretivist in nature or positivist, but you will opt for another data collection methods. And one example of this is, let's say that our research question, even though I'm a positivist and I want to collect quantitative data, but my research question is, what are the experiences of unemployment that people in Pakistan are experiencing, specifically related to their family life and their family relations or their social interaction with others. And this is a question that I cannot answer through quantitative data. And so regardless of my philosophical background or positivist orientation, I would have to go the interpretivist way by collecting qualitative data. So I think what's the most important thing is, what are your research questions for your study? And sometimes they end up determining your direction, qualitative versus quantitative. A little bit about 2-3 aspects of qualitative research, or principles like inductive reasoning and reflexivity, before we move into AI integration, because this is part of the definition or the process of qualitative research. And it also determines to what extent you can rely solely alone on AI. So unlike quantitative research, which is deductive in its reasoning, and you conduct a literature review, you decided a theory, and then you plan your research questions, and you go and collect data to test the hypothesis. In qualitative research, we opt for inductive reasoning. We try to find the theory from the data, and it's like you see these arrows in the middle over here, but just think of them as a circle. You end up definitely conducting literature review, but not going into the field to test a hypothesis, but rather to generate as much rich data as possible. And another important element is that once you're collecting that data, you would go home in the evening and analyze and read that data as much as possible, because you may have an initial plan to collect data for 1 month or 2 months, but in the end, based on your data, you realize you haven't reached saturation, and you continue the data collection processes. And that's why it's known as a circular inductive reasoning journey. A little bit about, because we mentioned the word hypothesis, classical qualitative researchers used to stay away from this word altogether. But the truth is that as the research processes evolve, and qualitative researchers they don't remain in a fixed bracket anymore. They do recognize that qualitative research, by its inherent logic, tries to generate grounded theory, which is questioning rather than measuring, and generating hypotheses rather than using theoretical coding or narrative coding, which we'll get into later. But there is also recognition that through literature reviews, you will have non-testable hypotheses. So let's say somebody is, I'll give you my own example, that I wanted to study women microfinance borrowers. And I had a lot of literature review. And though my decision was to opt for mixed methods research, and I was doing the qualitative research element first, the literature review that I was generating was a lot of, that I was reviewing had a lot of quantitative data. And that quantitative data had its own conclusions and hypotheses. So when you're drafting your literature review, you will have quantitative studies and qualitative studies. And how qualitative researchers deal with this is to start listing it as non-testable hypotheses, and those hypotheses actually help them generate better questions for their open-ended or semi-structured questionnaires. But the focus obviously is not to test that hypothesis when you go into the field during qualitative data collection, but rather to help you generate even more hypotheses or grounded theories. We move forward, and this is again a very important concept which I want to link into our use of AI later on, and that is reflexivity. It's a big criticism against qualitative research, and that is that the researcher bias is a very big element. I'll give my own example. When I was collecting data from Hazara Shias and Parajana Shia communities, it was a reality that maybe the experiences and challenges that they would share with me, I being a Shia myself, would be biased in their favor and maybe overrepresent their challenges, and maybe even use words like genocide, which other researchers or other readers or policymakers would not be content with. So reflexivity by definition is basically somebody has their hands up. I don't mind taking questions in the middle and stopping, but I'll leave that to Dr. Ruxana, and I'll continue until somebody stops me from CLT
Yeah.
team.
Please continue and finish your,
Okay, so by definition, if through reflexivity you understand and recognize that there are biases involved in qualitative research, the way to manage them, and we will cover this later in reliability and trustworthiness of qualitative data analysis, is basically through adding more PIs into your team, those who are not from your background or don't have your biases, who will help you collect data and then analyze it independently, which will reduce the possibilities of bias. And the recognition is the main thing, that you recognize that there are biases, and you indulge in reflexive and critical thinking to remove those biases as much as possible. Okay, so just very quickly, some of the strengths and limitations. Whereas qualitative data provides us rich in-depth insights, there is also the risk of reflexivity, researcher bias, subjectivity. Qualitative research has the ability to help us explore complex social realities, but then also it's limited in its generalizability. Let's say we're interviewing people from a local village. and special needs people within that community, their challenges may not be applicable to those special needs population groups living in urban areas. Whereas qualitative research supports theory generation, it's also extremely time and labor intensive. And also, you can read the rest yourselves. The presentation and the supporting reading material for all of this is available with CLT. You'll be emailed it. The last one that I want to mention is that whereas qualitative research has the ability to enhance validity through triangulation, it often lacks numerical precision. And what happens in today's world is that people want compounded statistics. They want quick realities to be shared with them through statistical analysis or box plots and figures, which qualitative research is not going to do. You're going to have to give time, not only as a researcher, but as an audience as well as a reader. As a policy planner, you're going to have to give time to read and understand what the qualitative data is telling you. So the different types of sampling techniques for qualitative data, again, I won't go into detail, but I mentioned the top two. There's typical case sampling where you sample a case because it exemplifies the dimension of interest. So for example, my research question is, I want to understand the challenges facing patients who are accessing free services versus those who are paying through the private sector model out-of-pocket expenses. And so I target to sample just those population groups. Then there's snowball sampling, and this is sampling from the network of preceding participants. Let's say I want to interview people from the doctors or physicians or specifically surgeons, and I have contact with 3 to 5, but then I ask them to give me contacts of people that they know, and that's snowball sampling. You can please read the other 3 yourself when the slides are with you. This I'll spend a little bit of time on. Trustworthiness. I mean, sometimes qualitative research is criticized for not having, validity and reliability, but in its own turn, it has trustworthiness and reliability made up of 4 main criteria. There's credibility, which is respondent validation and triangulation. This is usually achieved through conducting member checking by presenting the findings to your participants after your data collection and analysis is complete. Sometimes researchers actually return to the data field to collect more data because their member checking alerts them about something that is missing. And this is actually a strength of qualitative research. Another way of ensuring credibility is using multiple sources of data, combining participant observation, IDIs, FGDs to confirm your findings. A second way of ensuring trustworthiness is transferability, and this is the collection of thick description and rich details. One way to achieve this is through purposive sampling techniques and selecting participants who are representative of the population of interest, and then making an effort to sample population groups from different areas. And this can be done even if you have a target of conducting interviews with only 40 people. You can make an effort to conduct interviews with 10 people from different provinces. Dependability, this is the auditing approach, recording all phases of the research, audio recording, photos, interview transcripts, and data analysis. You just have to be careful about the confidentiality over here. Share it with your auditing team, but not publicly. And then the last one, confirmability. This is all about data checks. One way to achieve this is checking and rechecking through data collection and analysis, having more co-PIs on the team doing independent checking, and then having meetings to match your findings. Documentation of clear coding schema. There are no new AI tools that is helping us to do this, and then also capture missing codes. Now we're going to cover this in the sample in the second part of the presentation. And then inter-rater reliability, using your peers and your co-PIs or even your work colleagues who may not necessarily be part of the process or research project right from the beginning, but who will read your data and share and corroborate your findings and theme generation. So there are different types of ways of analyzing qualitative data. Again, the slides will be with you. I'll just cover the first two. There's thematic analysis, the most common one, which aims to identify patterns and themes. What it does is that it starts, whether you're doing manual coding or in vivo or AI, the aim is to find recurring themes like and keywords like neglect and abuse from interviews. And then there's content analysis which codes and categorizes textual data. And this is more about, as a comparison, not necessarily finding recurring themes, but counting how often religious minorities are mentioned in school textbooks. And a lot of content analysis, qualitative data is now presented through statistical means in publications, and I have a sample of that I'll share with you. So a little bit about, before we enter into the AI part of the presentation, a little bit about the difference between manual coding versus AI coding. The basis of manual coding is interpretive. And obviously, it's about the researcher, the person, their experiences, how much time they have in, how much time they invest in spending in that data. Whereas with the AI coding of qualitative data, this is pattern based. Instantly, you're going to get a lot of answers, but there's less interpretation involved. Now, the strength, obviously, for manual coding is that there's deep contextual insight, there's regional relevance, there's contextual context. And with AI coding, there's fast theme generation. Sometimes you need that help. In today's age, to say that we're not going to use AI or we're going to ban our students, it's problematic. So we have to take it in stride. The limitation, obviously, for manual coding is that you may not have the time, you may not have the, you may be struggling with deadlines and reports that are due to others. And then the biggest limitation with AI coding, which we'll cover later as well, is that you may be missing nuances and cultural context altogether. You may even have a problem of missing out on actually answering your research question. The researcher role in manual coding is that he or she is the primary over here. But with AI coding, the researcher's role may be even more complicated, because he or she is required to do the critical review and understand and recognize the limitations of AI. Ethics, with manual coding, you're usually very cognizant of reflexivity and trying to reduce your biases. And with AI coding, the ethical issue is integrity, authorship, open declaration, which we'll cover a little bit later. So the conclusion really is that we do have to use AI. You can't stop people from using it, but the human interpretation is central. It's the most important. Try to treat AI as maybe some kind of a co-researcher, research assistant, but definitely not a replacement for you, the researcher. And the shift has to be from manual analysis to augmented intelligence. And if we understand this philosophy, that AI is going to be there to help us as a research assistant, then we won't encounter too many problems. So where can AI be used in qualitative research? It can be used in literature review support. I'm going to cover an example for this, which will show the strengths and the limitations as well. It can be used for data collection, actually, in this, not actually collecting the data, but then helping you in transcribing it. I'm doing this currently, where I will record interviews and then ask AI to transcribe that data for me. But very careful, you have to be very careful that you read those transcribed documents and then hear the audios again in case AI has missed anything, and it does sometimes miss things. The third way to use AI for qualitative research is data organization and coding, the one that people are most excited about and use it for most commonly for. Let's say you, and with an instruction to AI, you ask them that these are my transcripted interviews. Please group responses into themes like stress, family support, and anything else that you can find. We have been doing this through NVivo for many years. It's actually nothing very new. It's just that new tools are emerging every day. And that's a disclaimer. You'll notice in these slides, I've mentioned certain tools, especially the ones that are free or have limited trial versions. But please, the disclaimer is that AI tools are evolving every day. So forgive me if I haven't mentioned any other new ones or free ones that are emerging for us in developing countries that are useful. And in fact, if you know of anyone, please do share them with me as well. So validation and intercoder reliability, AI tools can help us with this as well. Especially emphasis on comparing your first step of human coding with AI generated coding and to check for gaps. And then obviously AI is very helpful in report writing. I would obviously recommend you to write it first yourself and then use AI to help you flag any problems. We have been doing this with Grammarly for grammar mistakes and sentence structure. But yes, AI is helpful in also letting you know where certain implications may be missing altogether. let's say you have to write a discussion and a concluding recommendation report very quickly, and those sections may benefit from AI flags of implications that you've missed altogether or recommendations. So part two, we have we have 20 minutes left so that we give ourselves 10 minutes for question and answer. And if CLT allows, we can continue the question and answer section as well. So I'm going into my own specific examples. This is my recent book, which actually got accepted last year, but it's delayed in coming out because my mother was not well, so I couldn't submit the last final copy. But I was able to use AI afterwards as an exercise with my students to see the difference between my literature review generation versus AI's literature review generation. And though the book obviously has multiple research questions, for today's session, we're focusing on a research question that a researcher starts out with. What is the awareness, commitment, and practice patterns for different social welfare tools among the global Shia community? Now, the first step that I did, obviously, is that I conducted a manual literature review process, which was a 1.5-year journey. And obviously, it can be longer as well, depending on the researcher. The benefits of conducting a traditional keyword-based search across academic databases was that I was able to recognize that keywords like social welfare, awareness, practice patterns are just not enough. I have to generate more keywords if I want an adequate literature review. And so I started expanding keywords and introducing words like zakat, waqf, sadqa, because those two terms were being used in articles as opposed to the generic term social welfare. Then I was able to, the manual review helped me to screen studies based on relevance, region, and sectarian context. And once I had little group folders ready, I recognized that, well, I have more research from the non-Muslim countries and non-Shia countries and less from the Muslim countries. So then I made an effort to balance it out and again return to literature review. Again, manual review's advantage was that I was able to examine gray literature, YouTube sermons, videos from scholars, which AI did not give an option for until I prompted it, obviously. And even with the prompts, it was not comprehensive. Manual review, literature review gave me the advantage of tracing citation networks, where I got my first body of literature, and then I went and looked at their references. And for example, they were referring me to reports or material that was not online. And then I was lucky enough to go with my father to Iraq and actually buy copies of books that were not available in e-versions or not published by big publishing houses. And that was a very big advantage as well, and so on. So I'm going to move forward and tell you what AI's generated literature review did. I plugged in the same research question after I'd already done a manual review. And I asked AI to conduct the literature review for me. Obviously, it was fast. It was instantaneous. Summaries of large volumes of literature. But it was based on algorithms and patterns and data that AI had already, or references that AI was already familiar with. It definitely identified recurring themes across welfare studies, and it also helped and prompted me and it also helped me to refine keywords. Obviously, these last 2 points came based on my prompts to AI that refined the keywords. I wanted to see whether AI would also give me the same keywords that I had generated based on my initial literature review, like khums and waqf and zakat. And then it's all, so basically overall AI was helpful for an initial scoping review and a summary of literature review. Let's say it's a big article and there are big chunks of paragraphs, and I tell AI to summarize this for me in the first 3 lines. Again, I don't recommend this. I recommend you to read all the data as well first. So what did AI miss altogether in its literature review? It missed sectarian specificity for welfare tools. It did not give me the same keywords. It wasn't reading articles in detail the way I was. So, for example, it missed words like sadka donations, etc. It missed the role of the marja and the religious authority altogether. It did not give me information about informal and undocumented welfare systems like family transfers and waqf systems. It did not pick up on gendered giving and women's invisible labor through informal meetings and charity gatherings. It did not identify differences in regional and diaspora variations. For example, it didn't tell me about different practices and awareness levels between Shias living in Muslim versus non-Muslim countries. It missed historical and political backgrounds altogether. For example, minority Shia groups living in regions which oppressed them, or those that didn't have state collection of Waqf and Zakat systems. It didn't highlight any of those. There was obviously no pickup of gray literature and oral knowledge, and then vice versa. AI also tends to make up references and citations. You have to be very careful about that as well. So what do we do? Again, it would be foolish to just skip AI altogether, but we have to be cognizant of its limitations and start using generative AI as an assistive tool, mainly for scoping and synthesis, but not solely alone, without critical evaluation, manual review, and contextualizing of your research question. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on producing research that is unique, that is original, and that is of value to society. So I'm skipping some of these slides because I've been asked to end in for 5 minutes. This is just an example of IDI and how I generated an IDI through a literature review, open-ended questionnaire for an in-depth interview. I've also pasted a checklist for focus group discussions. Okay. I've also posted a checklist for what we fail to recognize is that with IDIs, it's basically you and the participant. And a lot of things are in your control. The maximum tool that you'll need is a recorder if you have permission to record. But with FGDs, you would need a team. You'll need somebody to help you plan the logistics, organize it, somebody to take notes on participant observations, somebody for the recording, somebody to ensure that all the questions are being asked and all the participants, I would not recommend more than 5 to 6 participants, have equal time to answer and participate. And so a team has to go in. A lot of students and young researchers, I've noticed, they plan to have FGDs, but then they're not very effective or successful in actually generating enough information or rich data. So this checklist is really important. This is an example of my transcripted data. You can see in green, you can see in red, this is the participant data, demographic data. Again, we tend to miss out on this. Please don't forget to collect your participant data when you're collecting qualitative information, because now even qualitative journals or publishers who are publishing solely qualitative research are asking for your demographic data. In green font are your questions, and in black font, participant-wise, is the participant responses. Just a quick note that please make sure that each interview, let's say you'll have 20 interviews, 40 interviews, 6 interviews, each of them look similar so that you can easily plug this into NVivo, and NVivo recognizes participant 1, participant 2, participant 3's data. The questions should be in the same order and the answers should be in the same order, one after the other. So this organization is very important. There are some AI softwares that are helping you do this as well. Some of us are very lucky that we've actually done this ourselves manually. And so it's easier for us to prompt AI tools to help us organize our transcripts as well. Now, this is an example of how to generate from your participant codes your coding. Your coded data very quickly. Let's say on the left is a participant quote. We live in a poor area where even basic facilities are missing and the nearest health center is very far. This is women who are talking about healthcare access in rural communities. And so from this, when I read this data, I'll read it once, I'll read it twice, I'll read it 3 times, and then I'll start generating codes. Taking out structure, taking out codes from unstructured transcripts is never a definitive process, and there's no right or wrong. I could read this data and generate themes like I have in green, far away from health centers. That's one theme generation. And then later on, I decide to call it access. But somebody else may actually generate something else altogether. And that's the benefit of having 2, 3 researchers independently analyzing data and then coming together and sharing their themes or their code generations. Just a quick note now on, I can't see this. Sorry, comparing AI generated themes versus our own themes through manual generation. This was a study that I conducted on the challenges in providing surgical procedures during the COVID era. You'll see on the left side that in the white background, these are the themes that I generated myself through manual coding. And then I plugged in the same data into ChatGPT. I know this is the free software that everybody has, and I prompted it to generate themes. You can see that there are only 7 themes that ChatGPT generated. Obviously, you can go in and further direct ChatGPT to give you themes and sub-themes, and then under every sub-theme to quote participants. But for the sake of the presentation, I had to make this simple. Obviously, you can also, another very important thing that you can see is that there is much more detail in our manual coding, and a lot of it relates specifically to our region, our society, our context. I'll highlight one thing. Under the theme stigma, which ChatGPT also recognized, social stigma and isolation, one of the sub-themes that I generated through manual coding was police and health department harassment. And police was mentioned only once, but because AI tends to look for recurring patterns, it missed that altogether. So some of the limitations of using AI by yourself, from my experience, just for this specific study, was that AI had weak theme generation. Qualitative data transcript was being used rather than the researcher judgment and context. So the output was inaccurate or unreliable. One example was that they missed a code on domestic violence altogether during COVID. There was limited ability to understand cultural context and lived experiences. For example, AI did not pick up authority figures listed as perpetrators, like the doctor or a police officer. There was reproduction of existing biases. AI did not pick unique minority challenges. For example, women and children facing more extreme challenges compared to the male populations. And there was oversimplified participant narratives. For example, a theme that I generated was that women's accounts of family neglect was a major issue. But what AI did was it compressed and made this into an abstract theme called practical and daily life challenges, which missed the gender element and it missed the specific challenge, which was family neglect. Another problem with AI is that there's loss of critical thinking. There's over-reliance of the researcher. You may be pressed for time. You may decide the AI generated codes are enough. Let me prompt it with a few more prompts and make it look manual generated. And then your own original unique theme generation is lost. And another thing that's lost is the process of reflexivity, where you're coupled not only with your own biases, but AI biases as well. So another big thing that we have to consider in today's times is that there are journals and publishers that are outright asking us not to use AI. And that's interesting. They're outright asking you not to use AI. And others are telling you to let them know and alert them where you've used AI, and they're asking for evidence. So they're saying that if you've used AI for literature review, can you paste that content as an appendix so that we can easily pick up or review the difference between the AI literature review and and the researcher's own efforts for literature review. And so if you've gone in and used AI or then not kept a record of where you've used AI, how you've used it, and kept a record of that content to attach as an appendix to your publishers, then you've lost the chance to publish. Ethical issues with AI, you may be entering sensitive transcripts, sensitive information. Journal editors are doing this. They are taking people's submitted articles and putting it into AI, asking it to help them edit it for final publication. And this has major issues for confidentiality, privacy, data security concerns. We don't know what's going to happen in another 5-6 years. Whatever we plugged into AI right now the privacy issues are questionable at the moment. Another very big thing for us as researchers is that a lot of people who are now, who have gone through the journey of manual qualitative research, data collection, literature review, analysis, report writing, and then now they're using AI as well, they will confirm to you that the work burden has just increased. Because if you are going to use AI and you're going to use your own efforts, and you're going to then check where AI's limitations are, obviously your work burden has increased. So this is something we have to take into account. We can't go back to a world without AI, but we have to recognize that our work burden has just increased. I think I'm going to end here, but I'm just going to take you through the last set of slides. I've given you a sample of from my own publications of how qualitative themes and sub-themes can also be represented through quantitative data. You can see frequencies and percentages. And this is how we've evolved as qualitative researchers. Your publishing bodies are asking you for this. How many people mentioned this theme versus, because in the past, it didn't really matter, even if one person had mentioned it, and it still doesn't matter. But this kind of data is important, so please don't forget to record it. Again, demographic data, like I mentioned, is important. This is an example, the presentation will be with you, of how I generated a participant observation tool, and then how I recorded it statistically and shared its results. Please use a checklist. You can use Elsevia's or anybody else's for qualitative research right from the get-go when you're drafting your proposal till the end. And here are my references, and open to questions, please. Thank you. I hope I finished on time. I got the note that I had to finish. I'm sorry. I'm 10 minutes over time.
Yeah, no,
Apologies.
you're not on time, Sara, and we have 15 minutes to go. We'll go over time if there are questions that you still have to answer. G.
So,
Sorry.
Dr. Rizvi, I've been noting down the questions that we've been receiving throughout the session, and I will be reading them out one by one, and you can address them accordingly. The first question is from Noman Ali, who is from SMBB Medical University in Larkana. He asks, in your opinion, what aspects of qualitative inquiry should always remain under human control despite advances in AI? And can you also explain how AI-generated themes can be considered trustworthy since they're not the same as manually coded themes?
Yeah, I agree with you that, like I said, that given the limitations of AI, which we've just talked about in quite a bit of detail, we should use AI as an assistive tool and not use it in isolation or solely. And what was the second part of the question, please? I'm still trying to find everybody's faces. Okay, I found you. Yeah.
The
Zarek, sorry.
second part was, can AI-generated themes be considered as trustworthy as manually coded
I'll
themes?
give you an example that AI-generated themes are non-conclusive, they're not comprehensive, and sometimes their quotes are made up as well. This was something that really scared me. I saw it recently on LinkedIn that somebody, a reviewer picked up that somebody's quote was not, somebody had submitted an article, and one of the quotes was genuine from their transcript, but one of the quotes was made up. And maybe the reviewer was from the region and they were able to pick up this kind of information. So what people in the comments section were writing about, they were responding that AI is commonly doing this. It will read 400 pages of transcripts. It will pick up that these are the type of quotes that are coming for harassment, community-based harassment. And then the first quote, it will pick up exactly the way it came in the transcript. And the second quote, it will make up, or it will change, or it will edit. So if the researcher is not reading it or mapping it or checking back, they're in, and then they submit a document like that, they're in trouble. So I would never, to answer your question, I would never rely on AI alone. Never, never, never.
That's a very apt answer.
I'm looking for a pen.
So we have another question which has been raised by a lot of participants. They are of the opinion that since AI is becoming very normalized in terms of research and you're using it to synthesize literature review, how far is that usage considered to be ethical? And another aspect that they've raised is related to report writing, especially qualitative research. Plagiarism checkers, for example, Turnitin also shows false positives, even if the work has been written without using AI. So how can this be avoided?
So, there are new tools evolving every day, which are confirming to students and young researchers that you plug it in and no tool is going to detect that you've used AI. How are you going to, the only way, my personal belief is that the only way to teach our students and our young researchers to openly declare their use of AI is by convincing them of its limitations. There is no, I'm as a faculty member sometimes cannot tell whether my student has used AI. I will share with them that please, and publishers are doing this as well. Declare to us how much AI you've used, for which research process did you use it, literature review versus data collection versus data analysis, and share the output with us as an appendix. And some will have clear guidelines. Some publishers will have clear guidelines. Some faculty will have clear guidelines that this is an assignment or this is a publication where we are not allowing you to use AI at all. Now, this is about personal ethics and integrity. It's that, that philosophical question that professional ethics is different from personal ethics because you can catch people on professional ethics. AI is now a situation where the tools are giving you the ability to pass off information as your own, and AI to plagiarism tools are not able to detect it. So this is where your personal ethics come, and also your passion as a researcher. If you really want to generate unique codes and themes and make this research your own, then you're not going to use AI or you're not going to use it in isolation. You're going to use it as an assistive tool. Let's say I've got a huge summary. I've done a literature review, but my supervisor is telling me that your literature review chapter is too big. Can you condense it? So I'm going to start plugging in each paragraph and say, can you recommend condensing it? And then I'm using AI as an assistive tool. And then I'm reading how it's compressed that information so that I can make my chapter shorter. That's all right. And then I write it in my forward or my introduction that this is what I've used AI for. And here's the output summary. I'm attaching it as an appendix. Now, this is ethics. This is ethical. But how do we can't hold a gun and we can't follow our students or any researcher into their homes and follow them 24 hours. So this is an impossible question. How do you ensure ethics altogether? I don't think we can until we turn to people's personal integrity and their passion for research and generating original research.
We have a question from Hafsa Bakar, who's from the University of Faisalabad. She asks, what non-interview data source is proving to be the most useful and powerful for modern qualitative research?
Listen, I don't really believe in non-interview qualitative, and that's why I highlighted this, that I'm really going to be speaking about primary data collection. So I'm not the right person to ask to advise you about this. And even when when we turn to secondary data collection, I lean towards the quantitative statistics like a PDHS set, a data set, household integrated survey, because it's going to give me some quantitative data. It's not necessarily, there are missing statistics and there are limitations of large scale quantitative data collection. But I would not, and if your question is about language based analysis, i.e., taking diaries of politicians from a library and analyzing them to understand why they chose war versus peace, or taking Twitter information, if that's your question, taking data from Twitter about inclinations of youth towards a sectarian harmony versus conflict, then that's fine. But I would not recommend using how AI would be of assistance over here is that you would first need to download that data from Twitter yourself, right? And then say that, well, this is data from 2005 to 2010. Can you tell me how many youth on Twitter are talking about sectarian harmony versus promoting hate speech? And then again, the same principle, you would have to do that analysis yourself. Otherwise, AI could miss something altogether. Biggest problem is that we are usually looking out for call for papers. Okay, there is a journal that has asked us to submit something in 1 month related to hate speech. And we decide, okay, this is a good thing. We need a publication. Now we quickly use AI. We've written something really nice and it's going to get published. But the answer is was something missing? Obviously, something is going to be missing if you've used AI alone. You may consider it a success because you've published it in a local journal and you managed to produce something that is of value. But is it comprehensive and complete? Then the answer is no. So yes, to summarize the answer, primary data collection of interviews is the way to go. If for some reason the research question begs you to use secondary data, then make sure that you've done your manual review first before you use AI alone.
We have another question from Noshaba Bano from GCUF. Since you mentioned the limitation of generative AI, and for example, using ChatGPT or any other AI software or tool to generate references, is SciSpace the best tool for literature review? Because genuine research papers are given from which references are taken, or would you recommend some other search engine like Google Scholar or SciHub or something else?
Well, the ones that I've listed over here are Illicit, Connected Papers, and Research Rabbit because they're free. And I don't have experience in others. There are ever evolving tools for literature review. You guys would probably be better than me, but I would recommend these three at the moment. They have their limitations though. They don't necessarily quote all the academic references. They would not go. See, the benefit of a manual literature review is that you will, with AI, you will given the research question, and AI will use only keywords from that research question. Whereas in the manual review, you will rephrase your research question 10 times and substitute keywords. AI, you would have to prompt it to do that. And then another biggest problem is that yes, some of these tools are known to make up references or not give you the complete reference, or so you have to recheck whether the APA reference, for example, if you're citing APA, is the APA reference correct? The same way we had to do with endnotes. If you remember, we used to use, sorry to say this, we used plagiarized endnotes, and endnotes was also giving us incomplete references, so we would have to manually do it. So I agree with people when they say that AI has just doubled our work. We have to check everything that's coming out of AI. We would be foolish if we're not.
We have another question also from Hafsa Bakar, the University of Hyderabad. She asks, has the transition from traditional methods of research to AI, like for example, tools like NVivo and Atlas that have integrated automated coding and generative features, from your perspective, how do these modern AI capabilities impact the overall effectiveness and rigor of qualitative research? And do they risk distancing the researcher from the depth of raw data?
Yeah, I agree with you, which is actually what I'm saying, that if you use AI alone for qualitative research, it is going to reduce the value and the richness of the data that you generate, and the themes that you generate, and possibilities for future research that or future research recommendations or the gaps that you identify. Overall, if you use AI alone for qualitative research, it's going to reduce the process. I just want to, since you mentioned NVivo, we've been using NVivo for years. So we already knew all of this about NVivo, and that's why none of us used NVivo alone. We would always do manual coding first, and in fact, NVivo actually prompts you to create nodes. So that was a wonderful thing. When we were trained to use NVivo, we created our own nodes at themes. So basically, we were reading our transcripts, creating our first line of codes called nodes in NVivo, and then prompting NVivo that, look, these are the nodes. Now tell us, is there more? Can you give more sub themes? Can you create clusters? Can you pick up all the qualitative quotes that come under this node or theme? And so again, we were using NVivo as an assistive tool. I don't know anybody, I have heard of researchers who used NVivo and then did manual review just to check if anything was missing with NVivo. But I have never heard of any successful, effective, sensible qualitative researcher who's ever used NVivo alone or now is using AI by themselves. I just told you that a senior scholar has been caught on LinkedIn. Sorry, sorry about this, but somebody, a reviewer, they didn't take their name, but they shared that, you submitted a publication where the qualitative quote has been generated by AI. It is not a quote from a participant. This is a grave ethical violation.
We have a question by Dr. Faisal Gulzar, who's from University of Lahore. He asks, is it ethical for peer reviewers to use AI tools to evaluate manuscripts? If not, How can journals prevent this, especially considering the often assign reviews to authors who recently publish in their journal?
This is a major, major, major issue. Forget reviewers, editors themselves are putting, or sub-editors or guest editors are putting, you submit an article, you don't know whether it's been accepted and how many times it's going to be rejected by multiple journals. You think it's safe, and it's been plugged in by the editor or a sub-editor or a guest editor into AI to check whether this is plagiarized, whether basically if they have a reviewer report or an editor report, like the editor's initial report is a template, right? They've decided what are the limitations of this article, have the gaps been addressed, what are the strengths. So they actually put in those questions and paste in the article and say, generate the editorial report or the reviewer report. It's being done. So the first thing that we did for Forman Journal of Social Sciences is, as is said, that the editors are not going to use AI, the reviewers are not going to use it, and we are asking the authors not to use it as well. I don't know whether the policy has been changed by Dr. Sikandar and the team now, but most journals have this policy. And the second level policy is for them to say that, well, if you have used AI at some point, the author, then you please declare it and attach an appendix. But every journal is saying that the reviewers and the editors are not allowed to use AI. Whether they use it or not, again, personal ethics plus professional ethics. How are you going to catch them? What are you going to do? You see these algorithms that are being made. A lot of people are saying that, when AI, you ask a question, AI already has some information related to it. So I feel like that about my book, because LL Beth was spelled a certain way by ChatGPT 3 years ago. Sorry, 2 years, 1.5 years ago. It was spelled by Google Scholar 3 years ago in another way, by AI, by ChatGPT another way 1.5 years ago, and now it's being spelled a different way. What does that mean? That just means that people are pasting in information. New researchers, as they use terms or write spellings in different ways, that information is going in. So AI is reproducing it, because we actually create the information that AI is reproducing. So the more you feed AI, the more it's going to match things. And that just means that people are using it left, right, and center. Even with confidential information, like I don't have a problem with, I'm writing something and I paste it into AI. But if somebody gives me something of theirs, let's say a student wants to then publish as something later on, and I'm constantly feeding their data into AI. Please, the student has written a literature review section of the thesis. The student has written the data analysis, theoretical foundation chapter of the thesis. Can you review it for me as a supervisor? I'm constantly violating uh, the students' information, privacy, confidentiality. I don't know the answer to this. How do we stop people from doing it? How do we stop supervisors, reviewers, and editors from doing this? I don't know.
Since we are running short of time and a lot of questions that we are receiving are mostly related to the ethics of AI usage, which has already been covered and answered by Dr. Rizvi, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Zia to conclude.
Yeah, I think, Sara, you make a very important point. And that is why, in the age of AI, the role of the human character itself becomes paramount. The ethics was always not a matter of the tools at your hand. Ethics was always personal. Ethics was your human attribute. And I think that is where we have to develop the strength of character, that people, despite having all the tools at their disposal that they could use, and they might be undetectable by and large, are still going the hard way. And I have noticed in many universities, and like you said, in many journals for research, they do not want an AI touched sort of a thing. So thank you so much. I think that was a very important point. If I may say, your three core pillars of your of your presentation were the research design, and lots of people, participants asked about how do you decide. You decide, of course, according to the topic, and the research methodology then can, to a certain degree, also play with your theme. But at the end of the day, the objectives that you want to draw out of your research are what helps you decide what you do. And like you've said, there's the importance of quantitative data. And that is why a mixed methods approach, which we will talk about later in these sessions, is the way to go. You have also talked about diverse sampling strategies and how different methods can be done. And you talk very strongly about researcher reflexivity, that what are your personal. I think I have noticed in research, or any work that you do, the most important component, in my view, is also flagging your limitations. And I think once you do that, that shows that you have had a 360-degree view of the question at hand, and that you have not forgotten that there are biases that can creep in because of X, Y, and Z. So, Sarah, I see lots of kudos for you in the thing. And we know, but probably many don't know, that you are a researcher par excellence, and we are delighted to have you with us, and thank you so much. I also would like to thank Fatma Ismail and Zarek for conducting it very well. Thank you so much, and goodbye. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sara.